Alright, 1.4, this week we're going to focus on three topics. Renaming fractions is our new fractional skill, order of operations, and combining like terms. We'll do this on Thursday, but this is a 2-day part on order of operations. Last week we were introduced to least common multiple, which is where we found out the number they meet. Now we're going to look at the process of simply called renaming a fraction. So if you look at the first 5 names of 1/2, that means you have 1 over 2. You could double both of these and put 2 over 4. You can multiply both of these by 3 and put 3 over 6. You can multiply both of those by 4 and get 4 over 8. You can multiply them both by 5 and get 5 over 10. You can keep going. Again, you only wanted the first 5 names. What if I wanted to multiply them both by 10? I would get 10 over 20. Notice that's still 1/2. 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2. So you can rename a fraction to have a bunch of different faces. Same thing with 4/7. 4 over 7. I can multiply them both by 2 to get 8 over 14. I can multiply these both by 3 to get 12 over 21. And again, if you need to pause it and type it into your calculator, that's fine, or you could just trust me on that, however you want to do it. I can multiply them 1, 2, 3. I can multiply them both by 4 to get 16 over 28. I can multiply them both by 5 to get 20 over 35. And again, you can keep going forever and ever and ever and ever, because you can rename it whatever you want to rename it, as long as they're both being multiplied the same. So our purpose for this property is to rename denominators to match. This week we're just going to focus on one fraction at a time. So let's just go ahead and look at your homework example so we can move on to the other things that we need to learn. The homework is going to say rewrite the fraction with a denominator of 48. And so what you'll need to do, denominator means bottom number, is you will need to do some work to figure out how did I get from 8 to 48. And the easiest way to do that is to divide. So we would do 48 divided by 8, which is 6. So in other words, I multiplied that by 6, so I'm going to put times 6. Again, if I multiply the bottom by 6, then I have to multiply the top by 6. And 3 times 6 is 18. And so that would be your fraction over 48. Again, 18 over 48. Look at the fraction that it reduces to, which is 3/8. Alright. Rewrite the fraction with the denominator 63. That means you want 63 on the bottom. And so the first thing you have to do is figure out, and hopefully you've got the skills to kind of see it, but you want to know what you multiply by 7 to make 63. If you don't know, just do 63 divided by 7, which gives you 9. That means that I multiplied this by 9, so I'm going to multiply this by 9. And 9 times 9 is 81. 81 over 63 is, that's why I don't like this calculator, 9 over 7 once I converted it. So again, there's your 9/7. It was your original name, and it has 63 on the bottom. So the other part of our work focuses on the order of operations. So let's just recall the general idea we've used to understand it. When we've talked about it in the last 2 quarters, so again, if this is your first time really caring about the order of operations, you might get a little frustrated, but again, as long as you try, you should be okay. The key thing to remember is that in terms of what's going on, hold on, my watch is acting stupid. In terms of what's going on, we've been talking about it for 2 quarters, so I can't really go too slow in this video. But if you really need if you really have an issue, just email me and I'll be glad to send you the original versions of the video, and you can watch those and kind of learn from that. But we talked about it being like a school lunch line, and how we figure out what to work out based off of who is important, so to speak. And not that students aren't important in the lunch line, but the person who has more power is going to get fed first. And so what we talked about was that the principal, which is parentheses, gets fed first. And you might want to write some of these down, especially if you don't remember, because you need these ideas to answer some of the questions. So the principal, which represents the parentheses, that's parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. But the principal gets fed first if they're in line. So parentheses is always first. We talked about how the assistant principal, who's not as important as a principal but more important than everybody else, those are exponents, they get fed next. So if the principal and assistant principal are in line, the principal gets fed first, the assistant principal gets fed next, and so on. Teachers, which represented multiplication and division, are after them. and students, which represented addition and subtraction, were fed last. The way I told this story was that when there's a bunch of students in line and a teacher walks up, they get to walk straight to the front. If there's 5 teachers in line and an assistant principal walks up, they get to walk in front of the teachers. And if the principal walks up, he gets to walk in front of everyone. So as long as you can adjust your thinking for that idea, we should be okay. The questions in today's work are going to make you analyze more in depth. Here's the thing. I recognize this is our 3rd time seeing it, so some of you know it, some of you don't, and if you haven't learned it in the last 4 years of working with it, we need to look at it in a different way. So, what we are going to do in today's work, and you might want to copy these questions because these are homework questions, is it says list the operations using P, E, M, D, A, and S. So what you do is you read this thing and say, what's my first operation? My first operation is S, subtraction. After subtraction is D for division. After division that's multiplication. That is not parentheses because there's nothing on the inside. So again, subtraction, division, multiplication, and addition. Alright. And once you visualize that, you can now look and figure out what letter would be first. Well, here's the thing. Student, teacher, teacher, student, right? Subtraction is a student, division, teacher, multiplication, teacher, addition, student. And remember that when it comes to 2 teachers, you feed whoever's in front, so that would mean that this would go first. Who would be next? Am I going to do feed subtraction before I feed another teacher? Nope. This would be second, because that is still a teacher. And now that the teachers are gone, remember you feed the first student. You would not want this to be your line and you jump over this person to feed that one. S would be third, A would be fourth. And we're not even going to work out the numbers because, again, it's not about working out the numbers. It's about making you visualize what's going on. So I hope you copied that. I hope you understood that. But, again, all you have to do is send me a picture of your effort or your attempt, and I can kind of talk to you about it through email. This requires you to look less at the numbers and the operations actually to connect them. Once you see the operations, you simply use your school lunch line idea to decide what operation to work out first. Again, notice it does not focus on numbers. We will do that tomorrow. So before moving on to that, we do need to kind of look at some exponent or how the exponent works. Again, this is the 3rd time we've seen this year. Remember that 3 to the 5th means not 3 times 5. It means take 3 and multiply it out 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you will need to expand it by putting that in your computer part. And then you take your calculator and figure out what 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, which is 243. Now, here's what's funny. Some of you aren't going to use parentheses when you type it into the MathXL, and you're going to get mad because it's going to mark you wrong. I am telling you that if you do not use parentheses on MathXL, it's going to mark you wrong. So make sure you use parentheses. 4 to the 6th, again, is not 4 times 6. It means take 4 6 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I always want to write the number. It's very hard not to do it. And then you type 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, which is 4,096. Alright? So again, that's how an exponent works. The reason I'm doing that is because one of your problems today is actually going to have an exponent, and you'll need to be able to answer it without having to write all that stuff, because you should be able to do it on your calculator now that we've worked at it enough. The last problem is going to be started for you on MathXL, but we will start at the beginning so you can see it worked out completely. Just be sure to remember we use parentheses every time we substitute for a variable. Eventually you'll use these problems on your own or do these problems on your own, but for now just take good notes so you can use them on your question when you see it at homework. So the last question of the day is a little tougher, but again, it's not bad. Evaluate, which means find the value of 7m squared minus n when m is equal to 4 and n is equal to 6. Alright, so first thing we want to do is substitute using parentheses. So we're going to turn our m into 4. So we put 7, parentheses 4, close, squared, minus, and even though we're changing this n into a 6, we just go ahead and do that. Now this part will be done for you. So this will be your starting point on your MathXL. Next, just like we did last time, list the operations as shown. So you start from the front and say, what's the first thing I notice we have to do? And that should be, I think that's multiplication, isn't it? After multiplication, you have an exponent. and after the exponent you have subtraction. Remember that that is not a parentheses. Parentheses would be something that has an operation in it, like parentheses 6 plus 4. So as long as it's nothing on the inside, that's not a parentheses, that's just a regular number. So your first answer would be MES. Based on our training, which letter goes first? M is a teacher, from what I remember. E is an administrator, and S is a student, which means the first letter should be E. And so now that we recognize that E should be first, we're going to work out the exponent. The exponent is this part, 4 squared. What is 4 squared? That's where I type 4 twice and get 16. And so when you write this out, you'll put 7. You'll turn this into 16 minus, and because there's nothing attached to the 6, like there's no number being multiplied, there's no exponent, you could just regularly write your 6. Why did I keep 16 in here? Because 16 is attached to 7, and I need to make sure that I don't get them all mixed up. What operation would be second? Well, looking at what we have here is multiplication and subtraction. Well, which one's higher on the list? And that would be multiplication, so M would be next, which means now we need to do 7 times 16. So 7 times 16 is 112. And again, that turned into 112 minus 6. And then complete the problem by just figuring out what 112 minus 6 is. If you have to do it here, that's fine. And it is 106. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps on that problem. You only have to do 6 because the first one's going to be done. Just make sure you take your time, and also understand, as much as, again, I love when students have an issue and they kind of pout. If you're pouting about the difficulty of this problem, you can get to 50% on your homework without doing this problem. So just make sure you go and get as many questions as you can done so you can take your quiz on time and get your points. Again, I do understand that that looks like a lot. And you might be saying, well, why didn't you do another one? Because you can replay it and you can see it in the same way. The questions on your homework are just going to have different numbers. But again, the order of operations is more about operations than it is about numbers. Until you learn to actually see the operations, you will continue to struggle. So this is the only day we're going to work so hard on analysis, which is usually pretty tough. Tomorrow we're going to look more at the numbers. It's just very important to take a day to focus on the important part, which again, order of operations is operations. Be sure to ask questions as you need. Making mistakes is a part of growth. Do not feel bad if you have an issue getting problems correct. With practice, you will always get better. So, again, have good luck with this stuff. And again, send me any kind of pictures of your work on that you need to.